What is going on, everyone? What is going on? Um, and welcome to a special edition of NFL playoff predictions. Special edition. Gonna go just like last year. I'm gonna predict each round of the playoffs. Now I think it's gonna go from the beginning of the playoffs as tomorrow will be the start of the NFL playoffs. It is wild card weekend. And then really just predict everything, predict who I think is going to win the Super Bowl to really put a bow on this season. It's hard to believe it's flown by, but it does this every year, man. But we still got some playoff football, and we're going to make the best of it, however it goes, man. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Final results for the season. In week 18, I went 11-5, which pretty good, was a pretty good ending to the year. Overall record 166 to 106. Lock of the week 17-1. And then upsets of the week 2-16. So definitely a difference there. I'm kind of thinking about next season, maybe, ditching a weekly upset of the week. Obviously, I'm gonna have the whole off season to think about that, but that is something maybe I've considered. But anyways, obviously, another solid season of picking, and without further ado, let's get into this playoff tournament. So looking at our bracket here, obviously, it's the bracket everyone's familiar with. The Chiefs and the Lions are the one seeds for their respective conferences, and then all the matchups we will see this weekend. So this bracket's gonna be filled out after the end of me predicting every round, and we're gonna go on and on, until I further ado. Let's get started with wild card weekend. The first game, Harbaugh as head offs, heading to Houston to take on the AFC South champion in Texas. They're still here. They're in the playoffs, and you recognize that. I think this some like they really didn't live up to it in many ways, but I will say the card in any way. Now with the Chargers, they play a style of football where if they can get that running game going, they could be dangerous in the playoffs. I do believe that if you can really get Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins going, that really makes life easier for Justin Herbert. Obviously, but also makes life easier for him is having a player like Vlad McConkey. So some of the guys who've been really instrumental to the Chargers' success this season. With that being said, I am going to pick the Chargers to win. I feel like Houston could definitely keep it close and make it competitive at the end. But I just feel like the Chargers are a team that, they have a formula to at least go into this game and win it. I feel like looking at where they are with that running game, and I to rely on Justin Herbert to necessarily play Superman and do everything here to win in Houston on the road, advancing to the next round. Next game, Saturday night, a AFC North matchup. The third time these teams are going to be playing this season against each other. The 6 seed Pittsburgh Steelers, who really have been in a slump as of lately, at Baltimore, who, I mean, it's the opposite, have been red hot. And really, I feel like you look at how they're playing going into the playoffs, it is ideal. How Baltimore is playing is, I think, the ideal type of football you want to play going into the playoffs. And with that being said, I do think this being a division game intrigues you. You could say, well, maybe it's a close game. the thing with Pittsburgh, they haven't won a playoff game in 8 years. And I really feel like with the Steelers, it's almost becoming the story of every single year. They have a very solid regular season for the most part, but once they get into December, they really start slumping and, are really sleepwalking into the playoffs. And that's why they are next in the first round. Baltimore really got their monkey off the monkey off their back last year, making it to the AFC Championship. We're obviously the full shorts of the Chiefs, but I feel like Baltimore is just far and away the better team in this circumstance. I feel like you got to look at this game, and I feel like you got to give Baltimore the edge here. For really, I think obvious reasons that obviously Pittsburgh has not been playing well, but Baltimore is also playing really hot. And if you get Derrick Henry going, it could act. Heading into our Sunday slate of games, the seventh two seed Buffalo Bills. Look at this game and say for Buffalo, how many more opportunities are you going to get? This is another playoffs you're going in, and then, and the question really starts to become, well, when is that going to be? As far as the Broncos go, the first time it's been a long road for that Broncos team, but Sean Payton and Bo Nix have finally gotten them back to the playoffs. With that being said, this game being in Buffalo and obviously Bo Nix being a rookie, I feel like you got to pick the Bills here. Maybe Denver could keep it competitive for a half, but I feel like, second half comes and Buffalo, especially with how they, do play with that running game more so now they lean on James Cook. I feel like you look at that, and that definitely, gives Buffalo the edge. And also, no disrespect to Denver. Denver's got a very bright future. You feel like Buffalo is the team already. So I got to pick the Bills here. Next game, from Lincoln Financial Field, the 7-seed Packers at the 2-seed Eagles. Now, this is an intriguing game. It is. It's a game I feel like people look at and say it could be the Philly week 1 in Brazil. And to be completely honest, I think if we were talking a few weeks ago, I might actually have picked Green Bay in an upset spot here. The only thing is, I feel like when talking about this, Philadelphia in that running game with Saquon Barkley, and I would anticipate that Hurts is going to play. And obviously winning in Phil, especially in the playoffs. So ultimately, it would definitely have been an intriguing spot to see the Packers in, but I just feel like ultimately Philly is going to come out and is going to show why they're the better team. So I got to pick the Eagles here. Next game, and honestly, out of all the wild card games, this is probably the most exciting one to me. Sunday Night Football in Tampa Bay. The Washington Commanders, Jaden Daniels, that entire team, their first, the best season they've had, in over 30 years at the NFC South champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I got to tell you, this is really a pick 'em game, I feel like, it really splits you down the middle. You could make a case Washington is going to win. Obviously, Jane Daniels has pulled off magic all season long. But Tampa has been here. Tampa's been in the playoffs. They've been in these spots, and they've won in these spots. And it being in Tampa, I feel like you have to ultimately look at that. This is a coin flip game. But in a close game, in Tampa, I feel like I gotta pick the Bucs to win. But it's gonna be an exciting game. Baker and Jane Daniels, obviously, I don't have any love as a Falcons fan. I don't have any love lost towards either of these teams. But as a football fan, this is a very exciting matchup. So I feel like it's a coin flip game and it could go either way. But ultimately, I'm going to pick the Bucs to win. And then Monday night, this game was moved. It was supposed to take place in SoFi, but it was moved out to Glendale in Arizona due to the wildfires in Los Angeles. Prayers out to everyone who's affected by that. But the Minnesota Vikings, the 14-win Minnesota Vikings, being a wild card at the LA Rams. Well, it's not in SoFi, but it designated home game for the Rams. Now I gotta say, I really, really do get the feeling that for Minnesota, and I said this for a while, there's going to be an expiration, and I think we really saw that game Sunday night. I think people would have expected Minnesota, I think, to keep it a close game. It would have expected that game to be close, and obviously, we saw that actually wasn't really even the case. The Lions pulled away with that game in the second half. And the Rams, another one of those teams, they've been there. They've done it. They are, experienced in the spot. They won a Super Bowl with Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. They've been regulars in the playoffs since Sean McVay got there. I gotta pick the Rams here, man. I do. I feel like the Rams are. This just feels like a type of game they win, and it's gonna be tough for Minnesota, to look at it 14 wins and being a one and done. But I truly think that's honestly the scenario we could be headed towards. As tough as that is to say for them, so I got to go ahead and pick the Rams here. So looking at the playoffs at the end of the first round, heading into divisional weekend. Listen, some very intriguing matchups for me personally. To look at. I feel like if this is where it does get to, this would be a very intriguing divisional round weekend. First game we're going to talk about here would be the Chargers at the Chiefs. Obviously, Kansas City, number 1 seed. They're off wild card weekend. Now, I'm gonna say I feel like out of every wild card team, I don't think this is the team the Chiefs want to face in the Chargers. I really do not think that the Chiefs are going to want to face the Chargers in the wild card in the divisional round, because out of any team, I feel like they could be most dangerous towards them. Now, with all of that being said, I am going to pick the Chiefs to win. I feel like the Chargers they still need to add a few pieces on both offense and defense before they really, I think you can look at it and say, are going to materialize to something. I feel like they're absolutely headed in the right direction. It's just, you really have to look at it, and it's a tough pill to swallow to see Kansas City back in that spot another year for many, but I just feel like that's what we're headed towards. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win and moving on to the AFC Championship. Next game, Saturday night in Detroit. Now, this would be a very, very fun game. A rematch of last year's playoffs. These two teams faced off last year, and these two teams faced off in week 1. The Rams at the Lions. Now, this is honestly becoming a regular, and this would actually be very much a treat if we could get this matchup one more time in these playoffs. Listen, I really feel like you're looking at it in terms of the standpoint where, just where things stand. It's a very much a coin flip game, and you feel like eventually the Rams, when are they going to get one against the Lions again? The Lions have had their have had Matthew Stafford's number in these big game situations. With that being said, I feel like this would be a very fun game, but I got to pick Detroit. I think it would definitely be a shootout. But I got to pick Detroit because I just feel like it's going to be very tough to go into that place and win. in January. With them having home field, it is, I think, going to be a nightmare for any team that has to go in there. So ultimately, I gotta pick the Lions to win. Next game here, and if this game were to happen, it would actually really intrigue me too. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Philadelphia Eagles. I really feel like that this is another one of those games where I do think, people would probably expect Tampa to go in and, maybe get rolled over. I think Tampa could keep it close in this game if it were to happen. Tampa obviously beat Philly pretty good early in the year. Now, it was in Tampa. This being in the link in the playoffs going to be a completely different scenario. And that, playoffs are definitely where home field comes into play. But if Tampa can really get Bucky Irving going in these playoffs, they could be a team that, not a lot of people want to face either. So ultimately, with that being said, I feel like that this would be a very tough game. But ultimately, I got to give the edge to the Eagles. Once again, the home field playing in the league, Saquon and Jalen Hurts. I feel like you got to give them the edge over a lot of teams in that spot, especially when you're at home. So I got to pick the Eagles. And obviously, this would be a very, very big matchup. The Ravens at the Bills. Now, I will say that I really feel like this is a very intriguing being at home. However, I feel like if there's any team, if they can really just stick to what they have, it's Baltimore. If you can get Derrick Henry going, and you can, obviously, Lamar does his thing. Lamar just had the best season of his career passing wise. So when you look at that, man, and obviously you still look at the running game they have, it can make them very dangerous and multidimensional. And with that being said, I'm gonna pick Baltimore to actually win. Ever since last, like, they're not new to the equation. They know what to do, and I feel like the thing with Buffalo is, look at how many times you put money into Buffalo, you put stock into Buffalo, and they just let you down. I really can't do it anymore. As tough as it is to say. So I gotta pick the Ravens to win. So obviously, taking a look at what I think conference championship weekend looks like, I think we're going to get two very exciting matchups between really that, the Ravens Bills game is a coin flip, but ultimately very, very much intriguing conference championship weekend we're looking at here. Let's talk about the NFC Championship. The Eagles at the Lions. I feel like this has really been for months the consensus NFC Championship. This is the direction that it really has felt like everything was leaning to. What are going to be torn or going to be 50-50 on it. Maybe really not. I feel like playing in Ford Field, and give all the credit to Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, but playing in Ford Field this January, it is going to be virtually impossible to go in there and win. So I feel like as long as the Lions can, stick to that balanced approach running the football, and then obviously that opens up everything else for their offense. I'm going to pick the Lions to win, and I think for the first time in franchise history, the Detroit Lions are headed to the Super Bowl. I feel like that this is really the team for them to do it. They have put that team together, and give all the credit in the world to Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell for the job that they have done, changing the entire culture in Detroit. So ultimately, I think the Lions are headed to the Super Bowl. But the question is, who will they face? The AFC Championship, a rematch of last year. the Baltimore Ravens at the Kansas City Chiefs. Last year, it was 3 seed Kansas City at 1 seed Baltimore. This year, it's 3 seed Baltimore at 1 seed Kansas City. This would be, I believe, the 6th time in 7 seasons Arrowhead has hosted the AFC Championship game. Listen, I really feel like when you're looking at this game, it's a very tough decision to make. Kansas City has proven they can do it more so than anybody. When you buy stock into a team, hoping they can topple the Chiefs always come back and remind you who's been the kings of the NFL. But the thing with this Baltimore team, and I've said this, there is one thing very different about this Baltimore team this year than last year, and it is Derrick Henry. We saw opening night, the Ravens. They lost that game by a toe, you can say. So when looking at that, I feel like if this game were to happen and Baltimore gets that running game going, that could be what takes the Chiefs down. And I'm going to pick the Ravens to win the AFC Championship. I feel like at some point, the Chiefs are going to get toppled. As frustrating as it is, to say, and especially if we look back on it and it still hasn't happened, but eventually the Baltimore team probably has the perfect formula to do it. Having the running game and obviously as a passer, listen, it is very much a situation you look at and you say, I think it's tough to bet against the Chiefs in any situation, but I feel like I would have to ride with this Baltimore team to do so. I don't think Buffalo could beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. I don't know if I could put that trust into them. I'm not saying they couldn't, but I mainly think it's just because what we've seen out of Buffalo, I don't know how much trust you can put into it. So ultimately, I got to pick the Ravens to win. I feel like the Baltimore Ravens are headed to the Super Bowl for the first time since, I want to say, the last time it was in New Orleans. So obviously taking a look at the bracket, taking a look at where we are, Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Detroit Lions. I really feel like this is going to be our Super Bowl matchup. And you can look at it from so many different perspectives, man. Detroit, they've never been there before. This is for decades, and now they have finally gotten it back on the right track. For the Ravens, you'll really look at where Baltimore has been. All the playoff heartbreak in the early years of Lamar Jackson, and finally toppling the Chiefs matchup. But ultimately, and I kind of look at Detroit and an experience of being on such a big stage could be what drives them in. Now, as far as Baltimore goes, I also feel like, this would age that a guy like Derrick Henry has been on. And they've been there before with John Harbaugh and won it. Then the last time they did it was in New Orleans, but it's been a very long time ago since then. So ultimately, who do I think is going to win the Super Bowl? I think in a very close matchup, 28-27, I think the Baltimore Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl. As I say, it's just, I really get a bad feeling that Detroit's inexperience and, their grittiness and obviously, the balls of Dan Campbell, as much as it's what has gotten them there, you just hope it doesn't cost them. But, I think we saw in the NFC Championship last year. It certainly did. So, but I also feel like that, Baltimore and what they really have going with their offense, it's going to be tough for anyone to stop. I feel like that running game, they have the perfect formula to do it. And it's really just the matter of Baltimore showing up in these spots. And if they do that, I think they're going to win the Super Bowl. So Super Bowl 59 champions, I believe, are going to be the Baltimore Ravens, and I think your Super Bowl MVP is going to be Lamar Jackson. I feel like this is finally the spot for Lamar to come out and get that big one. I think that, listen, you look at Lamar's resume so far, 2 MVPs. He could potentially be adding a third in a few weeks. And you just look at it. If Baltimore can get the Super Bowl, is Lamar at that point a lock for the Hall of Fame? Because I really feel like when you look at winning 2 MVPs and obviously transcending the position and how he plays, but also how Lamar has evolved over his career. Lamar, early in his career, was obviously that dynamic running quarterback, but now he's really matured. He's really grown as a passer. I feel like a lot of people had doubts of, could Lamar sustain this long term? He is. He is sustaining it long term. He's really adjusted his game to where he can sustain this style of play long term, obviously becoming more of a passer, and obviously that running game you still have to lean on. So ultimately, I believe the Baltimore Ravens, this is my bracket. This is how I think it is going to end up going. And with that being said, thank you all for an amazing season. It definitely has been an amazing time doing it, picking these games every week. I can't look forward to doing it. Can't wait to doing it again. Next season in the fall. But anyways, man, with that being said, y'all take it easy and I'll see you all in the next one.